Morning, YouTube. Welcome to Moose Preparedness. I'm Moose. It is a nice, balmy Wednesday, and just getting after it, right? Keep going on. Gotta get things done. Hopefully your week is going well. Mine has been interesting and crazy all at the same time, but not bad, right? It's all about what you make it. So, right now it is, I think, the 23rd of October. So there's there's an event coming up in November. I don't know, you all might or might not have heard about it. It's this election thing where the United States chooses their next presidential candidate or next president. And on my personal channel or my channel here, I am going to remain completely apolitical. Why? Because I don't want anything to be misconstrued saying that my views represent the views of the military or anything like that. So there's some legalities behind that as well for service members, but it's also because I don't want to sway views one way or the other. Do I think there's a better candidate? Absolutely. I'm not going to talk about who I think is going to be the better candidate for the specific things I look for. That's for you to decide. However, that said, there's a lot of things going on, and a lot of people have a lot of uncertainty, and regardless of what side of the aisle you happen to be on, uncertainty is not a good thing, and that's part of the reason why we prepare, right? We want to make sure that we are good and to perpetuate normalcy in uncertain times. So, we don't know how the election's going to turn out. I don't know how long it's going to take to figure out who won the election and which side is going to be more pissed off if they lost. I think that if either side wins, with as politically divided as we are now, there are going to be consequences. There's going to be riots. There's going to be, I don't want to say uprisings, but you can tell that there's going to be some things that are probably going to go on. And I think everybody kind of feels it and knows it. And again, I don't think it matters if one side wins over the other, that we're going to have uncertainty either way. And so I wanted to bring up 5 things to talk about with regards to what I think you should kind of be looking at prior to the election to stock up on, shore up on, regardless of who we think is going to win. So, number 1. Again, depending on either side, I think if you do not have a modern sporting rifle, AR-15, an AK patterned rifle, anything of that nature, regardless of which side wins, it behooves you to look at getting one now. Reason being is that neither candidate has been particularly strong in the Second Amendment field. If you remember the whole bump stock controversy whenever former President Trump was in, he banned bump stocks, which were a stock addition you put on, or a stock that you replace, and it allows it to help increase the rapidity of your firing with a single trigger pull, that it was deemed illegal by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, BATFE. So he banned them. Now, that got overturned, but not a particularly strong person for that event. If you look at the Vice President Harris, I think that her campaign has already made it pretty clear that they are also looking at going after that particular style of weapon. There are too many of them out in manufacture or out in the civilian world to ban them all, but you can ban the manufacturing of. And once you ban the manufacturing of, it becomes extremely more expensive to get. So if you do not have one, if you are so inclined, I would highly recommend looking at getting one and getting backup parts. So for those of you who have one, maybe consider getting ones for your progeny maybe getting one for your spouse, maybe looking at extra parts, because replacement parts are a thing. If you're looking at AR pattern rifles in general, look at potentially buying several lowers. So for those of you who don't know, the lower receiver is the only part of the AR-15 that is serialized and counts as a weapon. Vice the top, you can change out the barrel with multiple different calibers. So I would look at that. Number 2, ammunition. Every single election that I can remember for the last damn near 20 years, the price of ammunition has jumped through the roof the last couple of days before the election and then afterwards, and it very seldom goes back down. For example, I remember specifically when Mitt Romney and President Obama were in that election cycle, I bought 7.62 by 51, 308. So it's a military version of 308. And I got it for, I want to say, $300 for $3.99 for 500 rounds, something around that line. So about 60 cents a round, give or take. The next day, after Obama had won that election, that same can of ammunition was going for $899 on the exact same website. So if you have firearms, I would suggest getting them the food that they need in sufficient enough quantities that you can be good for a while. Additionally, why I recommend it is if you have not had the pleasure of living in a communist state such as California, ammunition is one of the things that they can really target and go after that does not violate the Second Amendment according to the Supreme Court, because their stuff is still standing. And an example of that would be every time I went in to go purchase ammunition in California for whatever firearm I was trying to get, I had to do a background check for each individual box and type. So if I went and bought a common round, like 9mm full metal jacket for shooting at the range, okay, I had to do, and I bought 5 boxes. I had to do a background check for that type of ammunition. Then I'd buy 1 box of 9mm 147 grain jacketed hollow point. I would have to do a background check for that box. So now I've done 2 background checks for different boxes of ammo. If I get a box of 5.56 as well, because I'm buying things, or buying 22 long rifle, if I'm whatever it is I'm buying, if it was a different caliber or a different bullet type, even of the same caliber, I had to do a background check, and they had to check me every single time. And they were getting to the point, and for those of you who are in California, please back me up, because I've heard rumors, but I haven't lived in the state now for multiple years, where they would track if you had a firearm that was purchased in that caliber, then you could buy ammo for it. But if you did not, meaning that you had something that was not on the books for them, you could not buy the ammo. So that means if you happen to get let's say a 12 gauge shotgun from your dad when he passed away, if that wasn't registered, guess what? You can't buy any ammunition through any gun stores there, and all the online sales folks, or I won't say all, but the majority that I've seen, refuse to sell any ammunition to California due to their laws. Their laws are very strict on who can sell ammunition there. So highly encourage you looking at ammunition, not because I think there's going to be civil unrest. Let me take that back. I do believe there's going to be civil unrest. I do believe that there are going to be people who are going to be very, very energized, let's put it politely, regardless of who wins or who loses, which creates people who may be doing bad things. So having some on hand to protect yourself, personal property, is one thing. I don't believe it's going to be World War III, Civil War 2.0. I don't. You know, at the end of the day, I've got friends on both sides of the aisle, and I don't think we're going to get to that stage yet. I think that it's just good to have on hand, because you never know when you're going to need it. it's the one component that if they take care of it or they get rid of it or make it harder to get, your firearm, whatever caliber it is, now becomes a paperweight. A really, really fancy and expensive paperweight. So look into it. I reload my own ammunition for the good part, for a good majority of what I shoot. But even that's becoming very expensive to get into. So just so you're aware, like, there's options, you can look into it, but your rate of return on the rounds, figure it's going to cost you somewhere between $500 and $1,000 to get a good reloading setup with bullets, powders, primers, the press, the dies, all that stuff. So it's a very large upfront cost, but it does give you an ability to make ammo if you cannot purchase ammo. Just food for thought. All right, number 3. And I'm probably going to get, hey, you're a hypocrite for this one, but I'd look at getting gold, silver, or other commodities or hedges against inflation and uncertainty. Now, I know in one of my other videos, I posted on there for gold, currency, buying and purchasing of stuff post-Hurricane Helene. We didn't use gold, we didn't use silver, but that kind of thing. It's not for that reason. I truly believe if you look at the way that the stock market is right now, where it's at all-time highs, and if you look at where gold is at all-time highs, I think it was at $2,700 per ounce. Silver is at $31, $32 an ounce. And it's only going up. There's a lot of uncertainty, and gold and silver have historically been hedges against inflation and hedges against, uncertainty for millennia. For example, when COVID kicked off back in 2020-ish, I got to thinking whenever they're pushing out all the stimulus money that, hey, this is going to be causing an inflationary bubble. I'm an economics nerd in some aspects. And when you start giving out stimulus money to a whole bunch of people and printing a bunch of money and you start propping things up, more money in the monetary supply equals, hey, this is going to inflate prices, right? So I remember looking at gold and silver, and silver was at $14 an ounce. And gold was somewhere between 16 and 18, if my memory serves me right. Please don't quote me. So we're looking at, that's 2020. So we're talking 4 years later. That's it, 4 years. Silver's doubled, and gold has gone up by 50%-ish, $1,000 per ounce. That's a pretty high number, and I do believe if times are uncertain, and if the dollar gets messed with, I don't know if you're paying attention to current events, how Russia is really trying to influence OPEC to drop the U.S. petrodollar and come up with a new currency that would help debase the world economy off of oil or off of the U.S. dollar in order to, essentially it's a way of doing currency warfare. Like, how do I hurt the United States without directly going at them? Because everything has to be purchased in U.S. petrodollars for oil. Well, if we're doing sanctions against Russia and Iran, they can't buy and sell oil because everything's done in dollars and we don't let them have our dollars. And so now they have to convert it to something else in order to convert it to dollars. And it becomes harder for some of our adversarial folks. Bottom line is that if that gets debased, now the United States dollar may or may not be the world's reserve currency. And that is concerning, especially with the election, with all these things we kind of talked about. But if the election goes, really, I'm not sure either way. It's hard to read both. But with uncertainty in the world, as well as with what's going on overseas and things like that, I believe that gold and silver is a pretty good bet against what could potentially happen. I'm not a financial advisor, so you do your own calculus, do your own math. The hard part is with prepping is that you've got to simultaneously both plan for life to continue as normal as well as for life to go down the tube. So I try not to invest in things that or encourage people to invest in things that are not solid for both scenarios, because I don't, money's a finite thing. I don't know if you guys have a ton of money just lying around to throw at problems. I work for the military, so obviously I'm not flush with cash. So I try and make my investments as smart as I can, because I don't want to, I don't have extra money to just throw on wild goose chase. But I would highly look at precious metals as a potential way forward. All right. So that was the top three. So again, firearm, specifically a AR or AK pattern rifle. That was ammunition for it to feed those in gold or silver, precious metals. So we've got those three. So number 4, another thing I'd really start looking at is what helps you to stay away from people or crowds and things like that. So I would highly encourage you to start looking at food preps and water preps. So those are really 4 and 5. Why? Well, if people are behaving badly, and let's say we go back to some of the stuff where they were blocking highway traffic, okay, that screws up with distribution chains. So you can't go get your bag of cheese doodles at Walmart anymore, and you're going to have to risk going out into public to try and get those type of things for you or your family. So that can be very concerning, at least especially to me, because now you're having to interact or potentially go out, and it's a risk, right? Risk versus reward. So if I can minimize my exposure to that risk, at least until things calm down a little bit, the better off I am. So if I have food preps on hand where I can stay in my house and not have to go to the store for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, probably better off than if I don't have to. Additionally, we've had some choice folks in the last couple of years who are targeting power substations. We have people who are hacktivists. We have people who sow the seeds of chaos. And I think there's a lot of folks that, again, this is if either side wins, would like to see chaos sown and say, this is a result of, or this is because of, or I'm doing this because of whoever they thought was going to win, didn't win, or maybe in celebration that somebody who did win. They're going to make life miserable for other people, kind of a gloating and being, in my opinion, non-American and going after people. So the way you can do that is just minimizing your risk by getting all of your preps up. Now, these don't have to cost a lot of money. And no, it's not like you can't get food afterwards. But what you can do is, if you shore up your food supply, you don't have to go out to the store to go get it. If you shore up your water supply, you also don't have to worry about, hey, what happens if for whatever reason, the water goes out, because, again, you don't know, and it's uncertainty, and those are really the big things that you need in order to prevent you from going out into public. So whether that's buying a big Berkey water filter like I featured on this channel, so that way you can purify your own water, if it's buying pallets and pallets of water, which, by the way, I think is probably not the right answer, but if it's what you can, if that's all you can do, that's all you can do. But getting something to where you can minimize your risk and exposure just in case there's civil unrest. This is a very contentious election. I think people are extremely divided on both sides, and I think that there is a potential risk for either party, whoever wins or loses. I think there's a very large risk that these people on either side could potentially have some violence, and the best way to mitigate the violence that is occurring is to not be around it. If you don't have to do it, if you don't have to go out, don't go out. It's kind of like I grew up in the mountains. If the weather's bad and you need 4-wheel drive to go out to the store, you probably shouldn't be out and about. Same thing same thing now, because I do feel truly that it doesn't matter which side wins the election. I think that there are people that are going to be upset on either side. And I can tell you, I'm going to be hunkered away with the family, and we're going to be minimizing our exposure afterwards, because we just don't know how that's going to land, and I don't necessarily need to expose my family to that. So hopefully this list was somewhat of an idea. If this didn't encourage you to kind of go get something, or you think that I missed some major key things, please let me know. Again, like, subscribe, share it with your family and friends. I know I keep saying that, but as I said, I'm trying to grow the channel because I want to have that discourse. I want to have a public venue where we can talk about this in a nonpartisan way, because at the end of the day, I truly want what's best for everybody. And I truly want people to live a happy life that is fulfilling, and being prepared for these emergencies. And having seen how people reacted after Helene, there was so much that was a risk. There was so much that I saw, and so much unnecessary suffering that people could have mitigated if they had just prepared. That's it. About a 20-minute video. Y'all have a wonderful day. Get through your Wednesday. Finish the week strong. Be safe. Out here.